All right, well, welcome everyone. And just so our panel knows, we probably have a dozen or so additional participants online. So that's why we have the camera there, and a lot of interest in this important topic today. I'm glad we're going to have time to have a discussion about improving African American and American Indian maternal and infant health through home visiting. So welcome to all of you. We have an impressive panel, and I could spend the whole hour speaking about their collective expertise and experience. So I will refer you to the bio sheets that are in the back of the room and online, and I'll introduce them by name and maybe your current role, and if I'm getting any of that wrong, please do correct me. So I'll start at the far end there, and we have Dr. Jeff Schiff is the Manager of Minnesota Medicaid at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Then we have, let's see, Clara. No, Samira, I'm sorry. Is Clara not here? Okay. So we're short one panel member, but that means you guys get to share more expertise. So, and I apologize for getting that wrong. Samira Bilal-Robi is a program manager for the Integrated Care High Risk Pregnancies Initiative and director of the African American Babies Coalition. Nicole Gurno is a family spirit parent support specialist at Headway Emotional Health. And Noya, I gotta make sure I get your title right. Noya Woodrich is the Deputy Commissioner of the Minneapolis Health Department. So welcome to all of you. And we're going to spend the first 15 minutes hearing from two of our panelists about an initiative they've been working on. And then the rest of our time will be addressing questions to the full panel. So I would like to invite you to speak about or give us a brief overview about your work with the Integrated Care for High Risk Pregnancies Initiative.
Great.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
The microphone, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to hold this up so people can hear. And I think that, so this is, and I'll just stand up so I can, maybe I'll put it down. That should be close enough? Yeah. Okay, good. My name is Jeff Schiff, and thank you for the introduction. I have the honor, duty, whatever, of being the medical director for the Minnesota Medicaid program. And we are responsible for paying for about 30,000 births in the state of Minnesota, which represents, last time we checked, about 42% of all births that happen in Minnesota. So we have an interest in that. Most people think of Medicaid as a payer. I'm the guy who's kind of the, I guess, the stone in the shoe. My team and a lot of other people, I would say, not just to say, okay, what about the quality of the care? How do we make sure that that care works? I have to, before I go too far into this, I have to tell you one little perspective thing on, as Laura was talking about, how to do governance for this organization. We have a Medicaid medical director group. That's our national group of people who are in my role. Medicaid is about $500 billion a year, and we have no money. So we try to get different national organizations to give us money to do projects. So you're in good company, I guess is what I'm saying. Or if you think that we're good company, then we're happy to have you. So I just want to talk about this. Fritz Onsorg, who is up north in Duluth right now, is our project guide for this, and he's I'm sure sends his regards and is not. And is doing some other duty right now, but so some of these slides are his, so he used to dance them. So I wanted to start with this because I think this is the crux of what I want to talk about. I want to just really tell you two things today, and I'll turn it over then to Samira. The first thing I want to tell you is I want to talk about how we've looked at social determinants, and all you guys are probably way better experts on this, either through your work or through lived experience than I ever will be, but I want to talk about it. And then I also want to talk a little bit about how we formulated this program, and then and then I want to give a quick nod to how we're trying to work more broadly. So this is what the JJ way is what somebody called our community-based doula model, is to be as supportive as possible, and that support provides the crucial buffer to the stress of racism and discrimination facing these women every day. And then another quote here is, history has shown us that people are incredibly resilient, and while we can't eradicate racism or the stress that results from it overnight, we might just be able to create environments that provide a buffer to what people of color experience on a daily basis. And for pregnancy, that buffer can be an incredible tool for shifting the impact of racism on generations to come. So this is kind of the essence of where we want to be at. We want to do so we want to really support folks, and I'm going to talk a little bit about social risk, but I think that what we have to identify and talk about is really cultural trauma and risk as well. So next slide. We know, and I'm sure I'm probably preaching to the choir here, our overall birth outcomes are the envy of other places in the country, and our disparities are the embarrassment of Minnesota. So keep going. Just keep going. I like baby feet. What was not in the introduction is I'm a pediatric ER doc, so I see babies still, and it's great. It's a very cool thing. This is 2012 data, but I don't think it's moved a ton. This is the low birth weight rates by race and ethnicity, and you can see the African American low birth weight rate is about twice the average or the baseline rate. So we have some work to do in that regard, and that's really where we're at. This rate is very much related to the infant mortality rate as well. Next slide. This is just what would it look like if we were able to bring the African American low birth weight rate down to the weight rate, and we'd have 188 fewer low birth weight babies. That would be a great thing. We'd like to think that we could actually do that with the right kind of programming. Next slide. This is sort of a little more of what we, in more detail about what is sort of the grounding of this. And this is really about a life course perspective. The authors of some of the articles are on this, but we really are talking about how the life course affects the pregnancies for these moms. There's two theories, I guess, in here. I would say the early programming model that proposes that people get sensitized early in life, and that carries with them. And then I think this is the one that is most startling and troubling to me, and I'm sure to many of you, is the cumulative pathway model, which focuses on stress over time, chronic exposure to stress, wear and tear on moms who are then less resilient during the I think we all see that. Next slide. Just some data then on the difference, and this is really focusing on African American moms. We focused for this talk, for this presentation, on that. There are certainly some data we have on Native moms that'll come up too. But this is unmarried. All these things are higher, living in cost-burdened households, living in poverty, birth to teens, and low birth weight. Keep going. Thank you. So I want to just say that I did put the cultural factors on here, so I feel like, I guess well, let me just say it this way. This is the elevator speech I've started to use in the department when I have to talk about social risk factors and social determinants, because it's an area that we have a department that has 2,500 policy people in it. People are trying to start to get their hands around this in a way that we can figure out how we can meaningfully impact this, because we have to figure out how to develop a structure around this. And I think about it in terms of modifiable factors that are economic, which are, and we'll get into what some of those are, and modifiable factors that relate to family function, things like incarceration, child welfare involvement, et cetera. And then non-modifiable factors, which are things like race, ethnicity, gender, LGBTQ status, and in that I would add the cultural trauma component. Next, please. So in the ACEs which are really the non-economic modifiable factors, they break down into these sort of things. I won't go into detail, but I'll just say that we're well aware of these, and we've actually started in the department to try to track what the exposure is. DHS in Minnesota is a mega department, so we have child welfare, we have, child care licensing, we have SNAP, the food assistance, and economic assistance. So we have access to some of that data, and we can try to bring it together. Next slide. Social and environmental factors. These are the things I would say are more economic. Next slide. And then this is just stressful life events, which I think are really important. And the bar on the far left is the U.S.-born Black population. The next bar over is American Indian, and then the bar on the far right of each of these is the total. So you can see the effect, the stressful events, problems paying rent. Next slide. Husband or partner lost their job, loss of job, job wages or hours being cut. Keep going. And then this is just a little bigger version of the same thing, but this is on food insecurity. So lots of stress in these communities, and I think we all know that. And our question right now from the medical side, specifically for this population of prenatal moms and postnatal moms, but also overall, is how do we affect this? And I think the conversation that's really happening at a very interesting time right now is, what of this can we do that would really affect health outcomes? Because we know that housing is less expensive than ER care. That's the simple version of this. And we're really trying to figure out how we can quantify this in a way that we can make more rational economic arguments, because those arguments sell in some circles as well. These are some things about economic support, and in these, lower is worse. So someone can loan me $50. Most people said yes, but not everybody. Someone to talk to about my problems, someone to help me. So those are just some more data. I'll keep going. I want to say now, I'm going to just talk about our program in a sec. I want to say now that all of these factors, the discrimination, the economic issues, the all the life stress, they're all cofactors in each other's lives, and that's obvious. And they all result in disparities. So really, what we're saying here is, how do we get under the hood and not just look at the medical side of this and start looking at this from a broader lens? So keep going, please. So iChirp was designed as a mechanism to try to get DHS as the payer to be involved in this. And the idea here is to work on decreasing low birth weight and the associated psychosocial risk factors. The idea of iChirp is really that we link with community organizations. That's where I'm going to turn this over to Samira in a second, to really say, how do we build an infrastructure? And I think about this at DHS from building this infrastructure at two levels. One is the infrastructure that we have, maybe three levels. One is the infrastructure we have to build in our agency. The other is the infrastructure of organizations that support this work and understand it. And then the third is really the on-the-ground level of the infrastructure of moms getting the psychosocial support and the coordination of care that occurs best with people from their own community, and best when they have somebody to relate to that they can trust over time. And that's really the capacity we really worked on building. So culturally sensitive is obviously, I think I cannot emphasize how crucial this is. I'm a white pediatrician, and that doesn't really give me much credibility, but I think that if we can work in these communities, I think it's really important. And we've had a great partnership, I think, with those folks. So let's keep going. We feel like paraprofessionals are the best solution because they are, paraprofessionals are a rich, and I would say, and I'm really been so impressed with the paraprofessionals we've had to work with. We had the opportunity to work with because it is something, this work is something they believe in very strongly. Keep going. We are really trying to coordinate all this. It's an important puzzle. Keep going. And then this is just how we're trying to do this. We're working with community resources like Samira's group, clinicians and clinical groups, and then making sure we connect with our patients in the best way possible. I think I'm almost done. I'll pass that. It's more of the same. I think I've said this also, so I really want to just turn this over to Samira now and say thank you for the opportunity to talk to you folks. I think the other thing I just want to say as I close out my section of this is, from the Medicaid point of view, we pay, but we don't often do programmatic things. We're really working, I'm looking at Mo and Kathy sitting in the front row here, we're really trying to figure out, and we're really starting to work with our other the other parts of government and at all levels, as well as you all, to say, how can we make sure we sustain this kind of model that mixes the medical side of things with the social side of things? Because we're all tired, quite honestly, of having ineffective, segmented things that we all kind of nod our heads and they don't really get somewhere. So we're always interested in your feedback. We really think, as we've come to learn about this group, that it can be really crucial to make that happen, and we really look forward to the conversation. Ma'am?
Thank you. So I want to say, okay, so I'm Samira Bilal-Roby. I'm with African American Babies Coalition of Projects. The Brains Are Built, and the Brains Are Built have had the opportunity to move what building a child's brain is about, starting from the beginning. And so it's really important. Then I also want to say that Dr. Jeff, what's important about him, two things. For the first time in my career, I have felt that DHS is really settling in to do action and that it really is going to be effective. And two, because he's a doctor, he rubs elbows with a lot of other doctors in the medical field, and so he really knows their frame of thinking. That's very important as we move forward. We've not had that opportunity. So I also want to tell you that at the end, we are going to hand out Theory of Change, which is really what iChirp entails you what iChirp is about. My role at AABC, I'm like the middle duck. We have North Point, we have Westside Clinic, and we have Open Cities. Those are the clinicians. Those are the experts. I don't even try to go into their areas, but I really work, and my role is to really work on supporting them. They support me, and then I'm able to get training and education out in the community. That training and education covers really quite a bit. We do I'm going to put my reading glasses on. And I want to also say, my urgency right now is hopefully in the next 3 to 4 years, I can retire. And in doing that, I want to see an impact. And the impact, when we start talking about school outcomes, when we talk about parenting, when we talk about all of those pieces, it really begins at gestation. And that is what's very exciting about this work, and my urgency to see if we are going to get policies and all in place that really make the impact, so we don't see millions of dollars going into a system and then we're still sitting at the same numbers, and that's really disturbing. I am Minnesota born, raised 3 generations, so I've been educated here. I know what we can do, and I know where it has gone to right now, and that's quite disturbing for me. Okay, now down to what is Samira doing. Part of my job is doing the Hub of Wellness. The Hub of Wellness is about bringing the perinatal educators, the messaging, healthy brain development, youth engagement, and supportive communication. That right now is the Hub of Wellness, and it will always move and grow as we start learning new things, so more pieces can add on. And that is our intention. What is going to help mothers be successful? Not only mothers, but the fathers and the children. So when I look at all of it, I'm looking at the total family, which is culturally what is going on. Thinking about her pregnancy, she's thinking about the future of her baby, her relationships. All of these pieces are going on right now. And so she's probably quite confused, really, emotionally. I have 18 grandchildren, and I'm a mother of 5. And I always say that when I went through pregnancy here in Minnesota, I have some horror stories to tell you. You understand? I went to some best some of the meanest doctors and those that gave me information that was incorrect. If I could do it over, I always say, if I could do it over, I could be a better mother. I'm not sure. I did the best I could, but I'm just saying that information would have helped me. On to the Hub of Wellness. I jumped there, didn't I? Okay. So the perinatal educators are the doulas, the healthcare workers, the paraprofessionals, and the staff trainers. Those are the ones that we consider you, home visitors. In fact, I'm not quite sure everybody's role here, but you are part of that. In the perinatal educators, from you. That you, as you are working with mothers, if you have mothers that are just starting, that you would be able to not only do good referrals, but we have North Point, Open Cities, West Side, which is the Diva Moms, Nubians, and North Point. They are that supportive that can be a support with you while they're going through this pregnancy. It's not to take over anybody's job, it's to partner with you. Then we have the messaging. So you will hear, probably starting today, if you listen to KMOJ, we have done PSAs that really have discussions between people about, in relationships, about parenting, pregnancy, what we should be doing, what we could do better. We have webinars that are once a month where we bring on some of the local educators and professionals, experts to really talk about it. So you, if you have other staff, they can, join the webinar. We will be updating our Facebook. We have a radio show that's streamed that we're working with, not our radio station, but we are working with Twin City Radio, and that comes on once a month and is streamed. We also always address adverse childhood experiences. We know whatever we have been affected with, we carry along with us throughout our lives. Then the healthy brain development, I'll just give you an example of something that we're doing with March of Dimes. And so the lead educator or head of March of Dimes is coming in town because she and March of Dimes have created a new tool. And so we want educators to really, and I believe March of Dimes is looking for home visitors to be at that table. That is actually September 27th. Youth engagement, we had a very nice conference past June with the youth, and we talked about all of this, them understanding, the pregnancies, why it's important for them to have the language if they have friends that are going through it. So we are asking everybody to come on board and help the community understand the importance of a healthy baby, healthy pregnancy, brain development. We also have coming up men coaching. So we call it Black Men Supporting Pregnant Women. and they're going to go through, one will be in St. Paul, another in Minneapolis, and I believe a third will be in Brooklyn Center. And not only are they training on relationships, what you need to do to support women so that they're not in toxic stress through their pregnancy. We also will be having, we had 2 new doulas. How many of you guys, you're familiar with doulas, right? So we have 2, the first, I believe, in the country of male Black doulas that are going to also train the men to understand relationships and where we need to go with that. We actually just certified 16 new doulas through the COPE training because we want to make sure that there is more in the field of doulas of color. So that's a plus. And I think that's about it. Okay. Hi.
Perfect. We just had the 2 minutes.
I only have 2 minutes. Okay, let me figure this out.
Yeah, there's no pass out.
So we are determined, we are determined to ensure how blending and integrating services could project a model from a collection of techniques, access levels, healthy attitudes, personal advancement, and heightened positive actions, reactions. We are also determined to demonstrate how the significance of cultural and past relevant historical, which he was talking about, we didn't get to, historical trauma and pain, what that has to do with the soul of baby. A baby soul, as soon as gestation, it's there, and it's general, we're passing it down. So we have to be really conscious of that. Our intention is to design and enhance the mother's ability to have a healthy birth. It does not exclude optimum baby birth weight family interactions, both of which promote healthy brain development. He's already talked to you about the causes: standard housing, concentrated poverty, neighborhood air quality, and environmental stresses, poor access to quality, substandard housing, concentrated poverty, neighborhood safety, air quality, and I repeated it. Okay, and then I'm going to say some of the pointers and considerations are that you're useful. Are you giving them practical destination points? Remember I talked about where ideas be easily actualized and be accomplished? Attainable, can they actually accomplish them and build on further success? We're talking about the moms. And measurable, can you and the parents as a team find evidence of differences that are made? Did I do it?
Yep.
I didn't read very well, but I did it.
Thank you for the impressive overview of all of your work, and that's why this is the discussion just starting, and I think already we have a list of growing questions. We do have some prepared ones that I'm going to cover right now, and then we'll take some at the end from our participants. So my first question I'm going to address to Noya and Nicole. If you could elaborate a little more, we heard quite a bit on the kind of the current state of health for African American families. If you could elaborate a little more on your experience in the American Indian community and what the status of things are there, that would be helpful.
So I'm Nicole Gurno. I work for Headway. I've been a home visitor with Family Spirit since Headway launched the program in May of 2017. Just want to be here to encourage our other home visitors to engage with Native American families because the need is out there, but approach is huge. One of the things I want to point out is that out of the referrals we received from various sources, none of them engaged through referrals. My success in engaging clients was from outreach. I rarely table. If I go to events, I get out there and I interact with parents. A huge thing happening right now, I think we've seen a lot about it on the news, is lack of housing. Native parents are hesitant to engage with home visitors because there's no home. I've been flexible in where we meet, and just gaining that trust has been huge. And then word of mouth spreads and friends are calling. And right now my current caseload is 14 families, 16 children, 12 mothers, 1 dad, 1 grandma. And just to further point out the housing issue, I have 5 parents in housing, 7 that were recently housed, 5 that have completed treatment since working with me, and 5 that have regained custody. So I serve parents who may not have custody of their children, and support them and get them ready for what to expect when baby comes back. And I'm so proud of them. These are just my observations. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'd like to hear from you too, Noya. And just a little nod to you. Noya was an intern at DIW when I was a kid, and when I think of patterns and seeing you as a Native woman in place, is the reason why I decided to go too.
I recognize some faces in the room. I've been involved in this issue since 1992 when I was hired at the Division of Indian Work. And I'm not going to bring you from 1992 to 2018, but here's a few things. This issue is a passion for me, has been, and always will be. And I have a few more than 3 years before I retire, but I feel like I'm running out of time. This is an issue that I will always talk straightforward about, honestly, and I don't do it to offend people. I don't do it to put up barriers, but this is important, and we need to have impact. So back in 1992, in the Teen Indian Parents Program, home visiting was being done by paraprofessionals. Home visiting was being done from a social perspective. So someone in the American Indian community had this figured out 25 years ago. All respect to THS, I'm glad that you're getting it figured out. But this isn't new, and I'm sorry, it's not new. Infant mortality, infant care, birth outcomes. In my mind, full disclosure, I am a social worker by education, is a social issue with medical implications. It's not a medical issue impacted by social stuff. It's a social issue impacted and has medical implications. That's my belief. I believe that if we are truly going to impact this issue, we have to impact all social issues. The medical stuff will come along. I also believe, obviously I work at the Minneapolis Department of Health, surrounded by public health folks. I love public health. I think actually if someone sat down and looked at the theory of public health and looked at social work, they'd be fairly closely aligned. And so I think that there's common ground here. And so when I say things like this, I'm not trying to take away our common ground. I think it's there. I think we need to remember that it's there and that we're all trying to do the same thing. I was looking at some numbers in my 5 minutes of preparation for this morning. Interestingly, these are numbers from 2016. For the first time in my memory, neonatal deaths for American Indian infants is higher than post-neonatal. So infant deaths for American Indians has always been majority post-neonatal. Things like sleep-related deaths or SIDS or incorrect information about how to use car seats, walkers, bouncy things, whatever, you know, the thing of the day is, and some neglect type issues. For the first time in 2016, we've seen the numbers swing. Not a ton, but we're now seeing more neonatal deaths. I don't know, I mean, I've literally read that about 20 minutes before I came here, but I quickly told our research people, I said, we need to pay attention to this because something's happening. And it just might be that there's an increase in the neonatal deaths that pushes the post-neonatal down. Doesn't mean that post-neonatal is becoming less important. But I think there's something there. If I had to guess, it might have to do with the, you know, the fact that the opioid issue has really been growing over the last 5 years or so. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's like this. So that would be my guess. But what I experienced back in the early 90s is still what I believe today, that home visiting, I'm 100% behind home visiting. I think home visiting is the way that we can seriously impact this issue. I think who does that home visiting is very important. I think there's a lot of people that have the qualifications and skills and knowledge to do home visiting. I think, and again, not to offend anyone, I think an American Indian person doing home visiting with an American Indian person is going to be the most impactful. That doesn't mean that other people can't be impactful and can't see success and can't help people, but an American Indian person has a common ground. We have the same starting point. And it's the same as any other issue. If I've lost a child, the only other person that can understand what I'm going through is the person who's lost a child. And that's the same with race. The only other person that can understand what it is to be an American Indian is another American Indian person. And so I think that that's really important. Why I do things like this is with the knowledge that there's not enough American Indian people out there doing home visiting to do home visiting with all the people that need home visiting. So how can we and I, as an American Indian person, help others be successful in my community? I think the social issues always have to be front and center. Minnesota Department of Health did a infant mortality plan, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago or so. In preparation for that, they gathered a whole bunch of data and put all this stuff together. One thing stood out for me, and I still remember this. One, if we can eliminate between 3 and 5 American Indian infant deaths per year, the disparity disappears, one, and our rates become better than anybody else's. So we not only wipe out the disparity, but we become the best. We become the healthiest. If we get our women a college education. Go to college. Glad she went to college. I mean, education to me, I think, is an answer for a lot of things. But when the data shows that, the disparity disappears if we get our young girls a college education. So when we're working on infant mortality and we are teaching parents how to put their child to sleep and how to put them down in a crib or a bed, or we're teaching them how to appropriately use car seats, all very, very, very important things. But we also need to be encouraging them to pursue education. And education, I'll bet, isn't going to just help fix infant mortality, it's going to help fix a whole bunch of other things as well. And I know we're short on time. That's all I'll say for now, but keep up the good work.
Thank you. So everyone here and online are home visitors and affiliated with home visiting agencies. So we run the spectrum of all kinds of home visiting programs. And everyone here, I think we have home visitors up to administrators. So we would love to hear from all of you, what strategies, advice can you offer this audience to help us intervene so that we may best support African American and American Indian families and improve their health outcomes. Maybe we'll start at this end and just work our way down. And okay, can you give your best advice in about 3 minutes each?
I really enjoyed your comments. I mean, not enjoyed probably is the wrong word, but they resonate. I'm gonna say 2 things right now, and they're the first things that come to mind for me. One is, I think we have to pay attention to the multiple layers of this process. That I think what we've had in the past is somebody saying, just go out there and do this, but don't pay attention to the layer of infrastructure we need to sustain it. And that includes telling the story to policymakers, collecting data, and caring about or trying to figure out those mechanisms to sustain it. So I think that's, I'll just say that. The second thing I think that's inherent in this panel is to do this through people that resonate with the people in the community. I think what Nicole said about through girls aren't working, I think is really a struggle we have till we develop some trust through the referral process. And then the last thing I'll say that's important sometimes is to look at how we measure the outcome of this. And in my world, there's this mechanism of measuring the infrastructure. Do you have a home visiting program? Measuring process, does your referral system work? And then measuring some outcome, which is often, did the loop actually get closed and somebody show up? All of those measures stink. I mean, to be honest with you, what we really need to measure is, when something I call deep infrastructure, which is, do the people who are doing the home visiting really resonate, and are they people who the people trust? And then on the other side of outcomes, we need to start looking at the real outcomes we want, which is low birth weight and infant mortality, babies born, with moms who are treated for substance use disorder. So I think we need to think bigger about that and claim that space a little bit as we think about how to do this.
I want to address one thing you said. I've been working in systems for, I swear, it seems like since I was maybe 35. And this is one piece of DHS, not all of DHS. So, okay. I don't think I need to say anything yet. Okay. Also, I want to, okay, so this is what I came out of. 2 years back with Think Small and the agency I was executive director, we did a home visiting curriculum. I don't know where it's at right now. I had to pull it out. But here are some of the pointers that I think could be helpful. To make sure that you're not being judgmental. To make sure you're building an authentic relationship. When you're doing referrals, if you see that there might be kind of a bump here culturally, that you don't say, I got a referral for you, I'm going to do referral. You might want to say, I think I can find some culturally relevant referrals that might help you. And then refer it to her. You know what I'm saying? So it's how are you partnering with other people of color in the community or American Indian? Okay. Can you and the parents look for shared outcomes? Shared. Can you find new mechanisms and capture opportunities for good ideas? And let me see here, one more. Can you seek their input and provide avenues to share possible successful outcomes? It kind of attaches to something else, but it's really talking about how you're working better together to help them grow. So I just want to stick to really the culturally relevant is so important, because they can be sitting in front of you, shaking their head and thinking, I'm not buying it. I don't care I'm just doing this because I have to. And if you really care, you're going to partner with a person of color or American Indian person in your community.
If I can piggyback off of that, well, this goes hand in hand with what I was going to suggest, is take advantage of supervision. That was huge for me. A lot of the families I was, meeting and getting to know, was not easy to go home and process that alone. So having supervision is helpful. Sorry. I had to meet the families where they were and accept that their life experiences were very different. And one of the things too is that the distrust isn't just in the system, it's also with close connections. And I had to become like an attachment figure, but in order to do that, a lot of moms would sort of test, like, are you really gonna come back? They would ask for things a lot, and I understand that too. I'm a mom of 5 and 1 on the way. I need things, and just bracing yourself to not have everything. I've had even requests to like tow an RV, so it's not like just little things. And I just be consistent and be present, and don't be offended if there's been things, because I think for a few of my moms, it was a lot of like, is she really gonna come back? Is she really gonna follow up? Does she really care? And once you gain that trust, it grows into a beautiful relationship. And even just your presence can really model for them something to aspire to do with their lives, and that stability is possible. So supervision, consistency, and don't get offended. Those are my 3 points of support in this.
Well, I would say going into a home visiting situation or meeting with a client or a patient, this is something I say to interns I've worked with, students I've taught in classes. Always go into these relationships with open eyes, open ears, open heart, closed mouth. Just listen and watch for a while. Hear their story, hear their experience. Try to absorb that and get where they're at. What is their starting point? And I do this as well. Our desire, because of who we're working with, is to assume the worst or think the worst, or we're working with folks that are referred from child protection, or we're working with an addicted mother. We lay a lot of stuff on her because of that, and we need to pull all that off and give both of us a fresh start in that relationship. And so just watching and being there, I think, is important. I always think knowing yourself is important, because my values and what I believe about parenting and what I believe about substance abuse and what I believe about abortion and what I believe about birth control, or what I believe about sexual relations before marriage, or what I believe about anything is going to impact how I interact with this person. And we need to set all that aside. Doesn't mean it's leaving us, doesn't mean that it's not still our value, but we can't place our values on other people. And so we need to know what our stuff is, so that we can go in and be the the most supportive of their situation that we can be. And then I never suggest that anyone go out and get an American Indian history degree, but you might want to brush up on American Indian history just a little bit. You know, Google it. It's out there. The historical trauma or cumulative pathway model. I hadn't heard that before. Sounds to me like it might be a little bit the same, but anyhow, that historical trauma is important. It's important to a lot of people. It's specifically, when talking about American Indian people, it's important to understand that there's 400, 500 years of built up stuff that we're, as people, are dealing with, and that doesn't go away. You know, I'm solidly middle class. I've got a master's degree. I live out in the suburbs. I own my own house. I, you know, am able to keep up with my bills. I have a child. I'm what society might define as successful. That doesn't mean I still don't have to deal with that stuff, right? I deal with it daily. And so things like socioeconomic status and social issues don't take that away. It just means that we've figured out how to work within the systems and around the systems that impact that stuff. So I think, you know, just going out and understanding that a little bit, you know, the broken treaties, the movement from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, the reservations, moving, you know, from urban, which is why we're here talking about this. You know, just get baseline information.
Thank you. I took great notes because I'm getting all kinds of good advice from you. And we're going to open up the rest of the time for questions from our audience. I don't know if you're able to check the chat, if there's any online ones. You can submit them through the chat as well. And so I'll invite your questions, and it could be to the full panel or to any individual here. And I think I saw Ronell's hand first, and I'll have to do my best to watch the order. But what is your question?
So it's more of a statement than a question. So the racial issue has been sitting there for decades, and the historical trauma and communities have been sitting there for a long time. I got the joy and pleasure of experiencing council members now retired my children, and they are incorporating American Indian healing into the clinical practice. But she has to go through the daily battles and struggles of this is what this person needs from a cultural perspective. So something like that within a system, bigger system, is something that happens. Now, African American culture is still making more spread out in terms of community, and now sort of really spread out, not in sort of centralized neighborhoods. They opened up that system of not redlining people and boxing them into one section. But in terms of it having people relate in culture, practice, and community, it's a very vibrant pieces, but it is trying to get the whole system to look at how it changes the model. And so people can go to an equity conference, they can go to a racial diversity conference, but it's just a piece of the common respect and decency on top of it. And Carmina McGlory at Northpoint did a training last year on just the impact of, if I walk into a room and somebody does this body language like, oh, it's you, who's not me. That has an impact on that whole starting relationship. And that's one of the pieces naturally that they said a lot of doctors do. They treat some people with this different. They don't listen to things, they don't hear concerns, they don't stress. And so it's more of a statement and question of how to get those pieces of personal culture to get one.
So Ronell spoke very eloquently about the depth of the work and the need for true system change. And I don't think I can do it justice to paraphrase, but I did learn, I'm going to have people come up and speak into the microphone so that our online community can hear all the good comments too. So I think you had a question, and if you don't mind coming up.
Hi, this is Maya Richmond with Simpson Housing. First, I want to thank you all for the powerful and important work you all do every day and for your perspectives. I have two things. One, I'm very conscious of my identity. I know I do home visiting and very conscious of my identity as a white woman going into predominantly non-white homes. And I know I talk a lot with my supervisor, Janelle, who was here about that. She had the most amazing phrasing where, that I use now. So whenever I meet a family, I say, I want you to know that I will never judge you. And I want you to know that if you ever feel judged in our relationship, let me know and let's talk about it, because that will never be my intention. And I tell them, but in other relationships I've had with professionals, I have felt judged, but no one has opened that door to let us have a conversation about feeling judged if that feels like that. And literally every time I have this conversation, people are like, thank you. No one has ever said that to me before. So that's something that I found has been helpful. Two, just yesterday I was at the hospital for 12 hours with a Black woman that I'm working with who is giving birth. We got there early in the morning. She met with one white male doctor, and it was just the most horrific experience. Long story short, we're sitting there. He's being very overtly racist. He's judging her. Well, why, basically, why are you this 20-year-old woman having this kid? I assume, he literally said, I assume baby daddy's not in the picture. And she said, no, he's in jail. And he goes, oh, that's what I assumed. And this was just one of the comments that he said. And then he kept turning to me to ask questions. And I just said to the mom, can I say something here? And I said, I looked this man straight in the eyes and I said, this woman sitting here is one of the strongest, most resilient, beautiful women that you will ever meet. She is an expert on her own body. She has had 3 other kids. She knows what is going on, and you need to ask her the questions and you need to trust her. And it wasn't until that moment that he started looking her in the eyes. And it was sickening that it was me who had to tell this man this. And I was sitting there and wanted to ask you all, kind of in those situations when we're working with people of color and other people are being overtly racist, what are some suggestions you have to handle those situations? So sorry that was a long-winded thing, but this has been just fresh in my mind, so I wanted to ask you all.
Exactly the right thing. I have no advice other than after you have that conversation with the man, that you know that you have to help the young lady speak for herself too.
Yes.
She probably has, you're sitting there, you're in shock, but you gave some language to it and you just work with her.
Okay.
So doctor?
Yeah, I was even
I'm going to go, well, I have 2 things to say. One is, I think you did something that's really important that I think is beautiful. And when I work in the ER, none of us, I'm far from perfect, but I try to go into a room, no matter what color someone is, and introduce myself to everyone there. And quite honestly, I find sometimes, sadly, the African-American dads are surprised by that response, because it's like, oh, I'm not just off in the corner. You really want to know what's going on. And I think that, I guess what I would say is my goal, and I say this whether I'm seeing a patient or talking to my assistant commissioner, is to project an intent to do the right thing to that person, because that is all I got, but it's everything. You know what I mean? So it's I may not know the exact policy thing or the exact answer for that patient, but my goal is to walk out of there saying, I'm going to find out because you're my patient, or I'm going to find out because this is my policy. And that diffuses a whole lot of things. The thing I want to go out on a limb about is, and this is really hard because you did the right thing by protecting that mom from that doc, but that doc didn't wake up that morning and say, oh, I'm going to be a racist shit. You know, I mean, you know, I think he would be surprised about how he was seen. And so I think that I mean, it's really a lot to ask of people of color to give the oppressors a little slack, but not slack, but just to make everybody, you know, and I do this, I have relatives who I think of as oppressors, you know what I mean? You know, I think how you deal with them and how you call them out in a way that doesn't minimize them is a really hard thing to ask, to walk a middle ground.
Yeah.
But I think if you can do that if you can do that in a way, you may actually find that that doc is saying, oh yeah, I really wasn't doing so well. You know, so I'm going to suggest that that's a really hard thing to do. And if you can't do it, I understand, because there's a lot of built up anger there. But I also think that if you can do it, you might be surprised. I mean, I'm sometimes surprised. I'm in a position of power, so I get to do it a little easier. But
what hospital was
Yeah,
I don't know if I can say. Can I say?
Yeah.
it was
it was at Park Nicollet. Yeah.
So that was in the clinic or the hospital?
The clinic, but they're like connected.
Everyone in the hospital was incredible. Everyone in the main part, kudos to them, were absolutely phenomenal. But it was this one man thinking, this is all literally from yesterday, so it's fresh, but I didn't know if
I would send a letter to him.
okay.
And
I would, yeah, I think that's good. And I would also add that, you know, people expect me as a person of color to speak out against racism. But really, I think what's going to be most impactful is if people not of color call other people not of color out on their racism. They're seen as more legitimate, right? I mean, it's just, it is what it is. And so I think that, you know, I mean, even though you were, you know, sitting in there with an African-American woman, she could have called him out on it, but he was going to hear you, not her. And that is what it is. So I think, you know, I would encourage people to call that stuff out when they see it.
woman saying, only the pain, but the impression that she went through, that she will play out in other places of thinking people, all white people are racist, and it's in her. She will remember that, and that's the most painful thing, but she'll remember you standing up for her. But I would take her on your journey of correcting it, sending the letter, you know, all of that, so that you are good partner.
I just have a quick little bit to add. I have moms who were in the methadone program and pregnant, and when they signed up with me, they admitted that they were too scared to go to their prenatal appointments alone because of that stigma attached to the drug use, the previous drug use, even though they're trying to make changes. So I would go and support them. And I'm also, you know, a Native mom. My first daughter was born when I was 21. I've experienced that. I felt that that was just how you experience doctor's appointments. But giving language is huge, like Samir said. And the other thing, I appreciate your comment, Dr. Schiff, but this is a hot topic in my current life, is impact versus intent. And we need to look at the impact more often than the intent. Same thing if I slapped my coworker's butt and said I was just kidding. Like, it hurts. And yeah, you're gonna avoid going, this is how disparities happen, you just avoid it because you know what's gonna happen when you get there. So I just think that was awesome. You walked her through it, you showed her this is not normal. This is not what you're paying for, because maybe it is public insurance, but he's getting paid to see you. So advocate for yourself. And then that'll go down to her children and they'll learn how to advocate for themselves too. So I applaud you for that.
Well, one more quick thing. Find good people. I mean, I remember when I was doing home visiting, I went to a doctor's appointment with a client. I was so impressed with that guy, I referred everyone to him. I'm like, he's good, he gets it, he's treating these young moms right, I'm gonna keep him busy.
That's good.
I just wanted to make sure that you knew I wasn't intending for you not to have said to speak up.
Oh, I absolutely,
Okay.
no, I absolutely got you.
Okay.
What I need to speak into?
Just speak right here and you'll be fine.
Kind of scary looking.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for your collective wisdom. My name's Terry Yellowhammer. I'm actually an attorney by training, and I've done some public defense work for mainly Native women in the child protection system. I was also a volunteer baby holder at the Minneapolis Children's Hospital, so I know Lisa Shefty, who's awesome. And I want to go back to make a macro comment on a slide that you had, Mr. Schiff, and I want to commend you because I was thinking that what is so often lacking with the downer statistics, that as a Native woman, I am so accustomed to having done presentations myself. And I know African-American folks know what I'm talking about as well. When we talk about, we roll out the disparities, and I know that we need to honor the truth of what's happened to us, to our people, to our ancestors, and what's continuing to happen to us, to the historical truth and to the ongoing realities of the racism in this country. When you talked about peeking under the hood, Noya, you touched on it with the social causes, with the medical consequences. I think we need to go deeper. I would encourage you to go deeper because that is ongoing, and that folks need to know that these aren't just things that happen, they are ongoing, that's in law, and people need to know that this is something that people continue to deal with, and it's a fact, and it is daily. And I know we talk about that, but people need to be educated at every turn, every opportunity that we have. The other thing is we need to be mindful. This touches again about what you said, Noya, about college education and the importance of it. We need to be mindful about the weight of negative expectations that is placed on African American and American Indian children. Think about it. If you have, in your experience, what happens to me as a Native woman when I hear these downer statistics, I cringe. I get this feeling in the pit of my stomach. When I hear about what our outcomes are, think about how that feels to you as a child, about thinking that you are expected to fail. Absolutely. That 73% of us are not going to be educated in a meaningful way or have a college education, but we need to focus on those of us who succeed. We are going to make it. We are going to be expected to be successes in our community. So we need to lift that up. So I would encourage you, to include that in your presentation. We are survivors of genocide. So the people that you meet, that Nicole, you're talking about meeting them where they're at in the community, look at them as survivors, even though they're struggling, especially because they're struggling. So lift that up. That's all I have to offer.
Thank you. Yes. And Atandi, if maybe after this one, if there's any online ones, I can't really read that.
Hi, my name is Wanjiro. I'm a home visitor, and I just want to talk about the statistics. I just want to piggyback on what you said. I think those statistics are always helpful, and I don't know what purpose they usually serve. What statistics I think would be useful when we're talking about disparities, especially when it comes to death, especially of babies and moms, and that's really a sensitive subject. What would be useful would be statistics of hospitals, doctors, clinics, providers, workers at DHS, who are found to be racist, to be giving out wrong information, to be doing these things. Like if we had statistics on that, like can the racial disparities onto the actors who are actually causing these things to happen versus the victims, because then we can talk about solutions at work. Then she talked about like lift up successes. So what you talked about, the doctor,
Yes,
who was good and you sent referrals there. So now if you could talk about what hospitals are safe for babies, what hospitals are there disparities for these people, what are the hospitals that are safe for people to go to, so that we can be able to actually affect these disparities. I know when you're in an emergency, especially when you're giving birth, usually they'll take you to the nearest hospital, and the outcomes of that can be dangerous. People die because they went to the wrong hospital, because there are doctors working there who have real consequences for the people they interact with. And so if we could have statistics, especially as DHS, you talked about all the ways that you can monitor and collect statistics of the families that you serve on Medicaid. You also have information on the providers. If you could flip the script and actually monitor who's really being discriminated, who's really causing problems in this hospital, who's really causing these numbers in Minnesota to be so high up, and what are we going to do to address it? So systems change to look at what can we do. If, as a home visitor, I'm always in this rooms with these women, and they treat me and her the same. So we leave the room, both of us have just been treated so negatively, and I have nothing else to do. I could write letters, I could do X, Y, and Z, but if there was somewhere I could go and report that one incident, so we're keeping track of where these doctors are working, where are these nurses working, where are these front desk people working, what's happening in this situation, so we can be able to see how we can save our babies, because that's what we really care about. We care about schools, we care about jobs, but life is, I think, the most important thing. And if we can keep track of where these babies are dying, which doctors are giving this wrong information, if we can actually have statistics like that. Those are statistics I would be happy to see. I'd be like, oh, we're making progress, we're doing this, versus, oh, this is how many more people are dying, versus white babies. That's not helpful to me as a person, but
so we would all love that. But systemic racism will not allow that.
amen.
So, and that's your answer.
And that's why we have to turn it to us and to the people who are suffering versus really the things that are actually causing us to suffer.
So it's really word of mouth. Like she has said, you know, we're a good place to share it with your community. But I believe what DHS will never be able to do that. We're doing good with him right here. But the systems are never going to tell. Racism will never tell on themselves. Racism will never.
But maybe home visitors can.
Visitors can do referrals.
Or maybe we could collect some of the statistics so that we can actually know which are the good hospitals.
I think if you do, I'm a fan of infant mortality reviews. People might know that as well. I really advocate for regular infant mortality reviews, because that's when you find out. That's when you find out where people are going and how they're being treated and what the outcome is. And then you can kind of narrow down places that you either want to target to work with or avoid.
We probably have time for one more quick question, but I want to thank Noya right now. She needs to slip out for another meeting. So thank you for joining our panel and being with us today.
Yeah, thank you all.
Can you guys tell your clients to get out to vote?
Yeah.
Did you?
Okay, we can squeeze in one quick one and then we'll see.
We have a question from Jen at Wellshare. She asked, how can we advocate for social determinants of health and implicit bias training in our medical and nursing schools? And she means that as a required topic.
Well, I'm going back to I'll go back to the vote. I think social determinants is not, it's not a new topic, but that is, for me, what's the lever that what makes it effective is that people are finally saying, you know, housing is a better deal than emergency department care, you know, or those sort of things. So I think what's different now is not that the topic's new, but that we may be able to create some understanding about that. So I think that I'm a little, well, after what you said about data, I'm a little reluctant to say data, but I think that a story and some information changes policy. So I think that may be a way to keep it on the front, and don't be afraid to talk about it. So.
Okay, Laura gave us permission for one last question. If you, sorry, the one right here.
Just piggybacking off of what everybody else said, and I don't know if you can answer this, but kind of more toward Dr. Schiff. What are we doing as far as having conversations? Is there anything you can do to have conversations with the medical field on the systems of racism, having conversations with doctors because of all of these horrible stories that are coming out? I've heard them as well over the years working with students of color and how horrible they are. I hear them here. Are there any conversations that are happening? Because home visiting is great, having that support is great, but if you're gonna go to the hospital and you're gonna have a bad experience, right, like that, and Samira talked about the trauma that happens long term from that, what are we doing on that front? Because it seems like that is gonna keep hitting us in the face. Like, we can do all of this, but if that keeps hitting us in the face and women keep having bad experiences, what are we doing to have those conversations? And it doesn't need to necessarily be point the finger, as much as I'd like to say point the finger, but having that open discussion and talking about, like, here's how people feel, and not necessarily say you did this, but here's how women are feeling, and having these experiences and opening that dialogue. I don't know if you could get people of color to come to the table out of fear. I don't know. I am not a person of color. I don't know how that would work. But do you know of anything? Are we trying to do this? Samira, I don't know. Are we trying to do, I know this isn't I know you'd like to see it happen, but you're doing a million other wonderful things in the community. What can be done? Because, like, my blood pressure just keeps going through, like, I'm shaking right now. I don't understand why we can't. I'm a doer. I don't understand why can't we just do this. I know it's systems, but
I just want to say one way to look at this is a person of color over many, many years has been asking this question.
I know.
You know, and so we're just, you know, trugging along. But we are designing different points of having gatherings, talking about this. We're gathering, so we are in the beginning. Surveys, research, we're doing all of this, and hopefully it's gonna just blow up and we'll reach more. So I know your frustration. I'm gonna be 65. Right.
That's like your high blood pressure is going through the roof.
Right.
Like, what is going on in the community? I can't even imagine. Like, I'm like, oh.
So I'm 65 and still struggling through this, and I do see a change. More allies have came along, and it's just our determination. We're going to do this, right? Well, he may not. I'm going to do this.
Can I keep you guys one more minute? I'm just going to, because I think that, I guess I want to say a couple things. My goal, I'm not quite as young as you, but I'm getting there. But I think my goal is to think about how to put processes in the policymaking world to make that happen. So I'll just say that we're in a sort of revolution right now around measurement of quality in healthcare, where we've really done this 1.0, which is we're going to measure processes. And I think everybody's in the medical world is kind of disappointed and pissed off about it because it's a lot of checking the boxes kind of thing. There's a lot of work in a bunch of different ways about saying, let's look at real health and real health outcomes. So there's a chance to impact that. And I really think that has to, and I know, like, the Medical Association, I'm on this committee at the Medical Association, where we're going to come out and say, we're getting them, hopefully they'll do this, to come out and say, let's look at health outcomes as our outcomes, even though we're not responsible for all of it. Let's stop pretending that drawing a hemoglobin A1C for somebody diabetic is a health outcome. That's not, you know what I mean? So that's number one. Number two is DHS it's kind of a weird time for DHS to do a strategic plan. We're doing a strategic plan, and one of the things that I am owning in this strategic plan is to gather input from people who receive our services about how to measure the quality, how to measure well-being and the quality. So there's a big thing that will be a big table that I hope we can have more dialogue around that. And then I think that inevitably we need people who represent communities working in our organization. You know, I'll just say that. So thanks.
Please join me in thanking our panel for